Welcome to the Parenting on the Spectrum show with board-certified behavior analyst and infant toddler development specialist, Teresa Alexander Inman. Parenting on the Spectrum dives into real stories, challenges, and triumphs, offering invaluable insights and support for families on your unique journey. Let's get into the episode.
Welcome, welcome. Today, my guest is pastor and author Josh Proteet. We're going to talk about the struggles of parenting. There are lots of struggles, and Josh has some tips for us. And without any further ado, here's Josh. Welcome, Josh.
Hey. Thanks for having me today. I appreciate it.
Oh my goodness, I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for taking the time out to help parents all over the world who are struggling against, to do all the things that serve their children against many currents and tides.
Yeah.
So let's talk about author. Talk about your book. What is it? What's it about? Why'd you write it?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So the book is Parenting Against the Current, and it's talking about how, kind of as you said, there are many currents pulling at our kids as well as pulling at parents. And in my time pastoring a church now, or even as a student pastor, next gen pastor, even before I had kids, which is super ironic because I'm over here trying to figure this thing out too. But I would have parents come up to me and say, hey, I recognize that if I'm not leading my kids, someone else will. And I want to make sure that we're moving upstream. We're moving in the right direction. What do we do? And over in these conversations, it just kept being brought up that we needed to have a practical game plan to help parents shepherd their kids well and to lead them to the places that they're meant to be. And so that was kind of the origin story of this book. It started where I was like, all right, I had kids at this point and I was figuring it out too. And then also stumbling through, just falling on my face and like, all right, let's learn the hard way. And so I started this blog and I was like, all right, we're going to do a blog and we're just going to focus on practical equipping for parents. And as I started the blog, I just couldn't stop writing. And then my co-author, who is a executive pastor down at a church in Florida, he was kind of the same way. We just kept going to the point where we're like, all right, well, I guess we wrote a book and we need to figure out, like, what does it look like to actually put this in the hands of parents? And so we partnered with some churches and some different networks to do that, with the goal of making sure parents aren't going through this alone, that you're not just building the plane while flying. That's part of it. You get the kids, they don't come with a tutorial. But also, like, there are steps and practical steps that we can take as parents to set us up to win in some pretty big ways. And that was really the heart of this book.
Wow, yeah. And we do need that, instead of going through it ourselves, right? Trying to find all the answers. It's nice to have somebody do the work for us, because if everybody's playing hit and miss, and we tend to miss more than we hit, that becomes becomes frustrating. It becomes, we feel defeated. So having a template, a game plan, is super, super helpful. Now, what would you say is the first step to parenting against the current? What can we do? What does a parent, what's the first question we ask ourselves?
Yeah, I think that's the best question to ask, actually, because I've got a garbage truck right outside, so I'm hoping that's not coming on here.
I hear it.
Things are happening outside. So the first question that we need to ask is, where am I parenting toward? Because if I don't know the destination, parenting, the initial current in parenting is, I'm just trying to keep my head above water. Like, I'm just trying to survive. And if we're just treading water, what happens in a current is you're getting pulled away. Mm-hmm. Yeah, your head's above water, but the current has you. If you're not moving against it, you're being taken by it. And so really understanding, what is the destination, becoming a destination parent, and where do I want to lead my family to? And so I'll give you a practical example. For my family, my bride, Jenny, and I have had a lot of conversations about this. And the destination we're leading our kids toward, it's threefold. We want them to love God, We want them to love people, and we want them to enjoy us. That last one is when they don't have to be around us, we still want them to choose to be around us. And what that is for us, because that's our destination, everything we do as a family, whether it's me coaching soccer games or painting unicorns on the table or going to church on Sunday, everything we do is pushed through that filter. If it doesn't help us get to the destination we're moving toward, we don't do it.
Oh, that is so, so powerful. If it doesn't get you to the destination, don't do it. Because then you're going against, right? Like you're going against not the current, but your destination. Right?
Yeah, and the struggle is like, I don't need to fill my calendar. It fills itself.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like it's like in everything I say yes to, I'm saying no to something else, but we usually don't weigh that out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like, oh, can I do this versus should I do this? And so we start doing, and we get so busy checking all these boxes that we forget to actually measure it out. And does it help us get to where we're meant to go?
That makes so much sense. Because I think for me, growing up, I didn't know how to say no.
Yeah.
No, like it just wasn't in my vocabulary. My husband will still argue that there's always room to grow. So,
Sure.
And we're always growing, right? Like he says all the time, if we're not growing, we're dying. So it's really important to, first of all, what I also hear you saying, not judge yourself, right? Because they did not come with any, they didn't come with any guidelines. No, nothing. They just plopped. Here we are, welcome them into the world. And now what do I do? So, yeah. So we've asked the question, right? What's the destination? And then we plan the voyage to get to the destination.
Yeah. Everything that we do is meant to be by design, a mile marker along the way. Because what I've also found is kind of what you were sharing a minute ago, because shame can own a parent in the same way that it can own a kid. And if I am only destination minded, from the standpoint of all I focus on is getting to where we're going, it's actually going to be a really discouraging journey. Like when you're if I was traveling to Florida to visit my parents, we're in Connecticut. Like that's a long drive. We're not focused on Florida. We're focused on, okay, what's the lunch stop? What's the next mile marker? What's the game we're going to play? And if we can shift one, yes, be a destination parent, know where you're going, but two, celebrate the mile markers along the way. Because if we don't, it's gonna lead parents to your kid strikes out in a baseball game, and they don't throw their helmet, and they keep their chin up, and they celebrate the next player up to bat. That's a win. Like you're looking at the destination of, well, I want my kid to hit home runs, which ultimately really shouldn't be your destination. That's a lesser destination. But say it was, you're missing out on a huge victory. Honestly, it's a heart victory in your kid where their chin is up, they are cheering on the next person, and they're not owned by pride. There's victory in that. But if we don't look for the mile markers, we're going to miss the celebrations that our kids are meant to experience. They're going to be owned by shame in the same way that we can. And we're also going to be like missing the entire point of the drive. It's not just, I expect you to be an adult. Well, you're 5 years old. Like you're also going to do 5-year-old things. Let's celebrate those along the journey.
Yes. And and again, some of the 5-year-old things, they can be frustrating, but then understanding that the child is 5. There are times when I work with parents and I have to have them calm down from their tantrum. I was like, you're having a tantrum right now. Well, no, I'm not, because a 5-year-old tantrum looks a little bit different than an adult tantrum. So we have to accept that our child is doing that age appropriately, what we've modeled. So it's really important that we model for them the behaviors we want them to imitate. And so what are some ways that you found that makes like that easier for parents?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There are a couple very practical things that parents can do to model leading their kids to where they are meant to go, to the destination. One, there's a couple phrases I would say. The first one that parents should know that we are horrible at, but we could do better is, "Will you forgive me?" Like that is a phrase that I need to, like my daughter and son, they need to hear that from me more than they hear from anybody else. Because if I am showing my mistakes, owning them, and stepping forward in humility, I'm modeling it for them. The second piece is I'm letting them know that when they become adults, perfection is not the target. Because if perfection is the target, shame is going to own my kids because they're not going to pull it off. So, will you forgive me is huge. I think that in authority positions, we view weakness as this undermining process of, man, but then they won't think I'm a good leader and then they won't follow me. Lies. Like it's actually the opposite. When I model when I boast in my weakness, and actually surround myself with other people, just as a leader, with other people who can build on my weakness with their strengths,
Mhm.
that is good leadership, and it gives me all the more credibility. And so we don't need to like armor up and pretend like we're perfect as parents. Like model it for your kids. If you want them to ask for forgiveness, if I want them to really do anything, I need to be modeling that in my life. The second phrase that parents can know, and it kind of ties into the showing weakness, is I don't know. Like when your kid asks you a question, it's okay to say I don't know. It's not okay to leave it there. I would say it should be I don't know, but let's find out together. It's a come along with me as we like learn and grow and are stretched. If we can have those two phrases locked in, it's going to build our connection as parents with our kids, but it's also going to empower us to grow as parents too. Like you're not there yet, I'm not there yet, which is ironic. It's like I wrote a book, and it's like, man, I'm still trying to figure this thing out. The whole book was really written after parents who were crushing it that were surrounding me and my family, because I'm still growing, you're still growing. And so those are two really practical phrases that I think parents, if we could get really good at those phrases, we would be modeling more than you realize. Um, and shame wouldn't have a hold of our homes in the way that I think it often does.
Absolutely. And just to speak to both of those in my life, I remember, apologizing to my children, and they're like, "Mom," I said, "Yes, listen, I, I know I'm not a perfect mother, and I want your forgiveness. Please forgive me for, all the things." And they were like, I was like, "Yeah." And so and it took me a while to get there because
Sure.
pride and all this and that, and I grew up in a world where it says do as I say, not as I do, and I don't have to answer to you, you're the child kind of thing. And and it's just that parents were doing the best they could. They didn't know better. This is how they were
Sure.
parented or not. Like my mom, her mom passed when she was 7. So she did the absolute best that she could with what she knew. And I had to understand that, even though there was so many things, I was just like, oh my goodness, this woman. I became her.
Yeah.
Because again, we become what we see. And, children are always looking. Like we try to hide things, but they know. And the best thing to
Oh
do
yeah.
is to be honest with them, because when we're not, they feel like there's something wrong with them, or I believe they do. Do you agree with that statement?
The statement of when we hide it, hide our brokenness, that our kids think there's something. Yeah, absolutely. Like that translates. We are, whether we're using our words or not, we are communicating something.
Mhm.
And our kids are like, where your footsteps are, you can look back and you're going to see tiny feet behind you. They're following as best they can. And if they think the target is perfection or in conflict, this can happen too, is like you puff up, you lash out, you wall up and get silent, you isolate, you get passive aggressive, whatever your strategy is in conflict, That's what your kid is going to learn is, okay, that's the weaponry. Like that's the armory that I'm supposed to bring into disagreement and into my marriage and into how I engage with other people. That's one of the like sobering things for me in parenting is that I have to constantly be reminded that I am teaching my daughter how a man is supposed to treat her, and I'm teaching my son how he is meant to treat a woman. Which means that when I botch it, and I botch it right in front of them. So say I say something to my bride, Jenny, that is unkind, uncaring, whatever. If they saw the mistake, they also need to see the reconciliation process. And then I need to ask their forgiveness. I remember there was this was awesome. So my daughter was 4 at the time, and I don't even remember the conflict with Jenny. Something happened, and all I really remember is I knew I was right. Like it was like I'm right in this, and we weren't yelling, but it was tense. So I'm talking to Jenny and telling her how right I am, which is always just a great strategy. And Jenny is crying, and our daughter Lila, who's 4 at the time, sees what's going on, walks up to Jenny and starts like just rubbing her back. So first side note, my daughter, who at 4 years old is already better at, like, she's sleeping with a nightlight and better at compassion than I naturally am, crushing it. So I continue with my logical argument of like, this is why I'm correct. And again, there was no yelling, but obviously things weren't great in the Poteet household. And then my daughter shifts over to me. She walks around the couch to me and she whispers in my ear. She goes, "Dad, Mom's crying." And for me, that was a moment of like, because it could have been like, "Hey, tiny human, mind your own business." Hey, like this is adult stuff. You go away. Could have said that. The problem was she was right. Like she was altogether right on the fact that I was focused on my argument and I lost sight of the person in front of me. And what I needed to do in that moment, and what I did, praise God, was seek forgiveness of my wife, like whether I was right or wrong. And again, I don't even remember the argument. I don't know if I actually was right, but I do know I was wrong in the way that I handled it. And so I needed to seek forgiveness in that. And then I needed to seek forgiveness of my daughter for saying, "Hey, I didn't treat your mom in this moment the way that I am meant to as a man. Will you forgive me?" In that, I'm modeling something. Conflict is the biggest area where we are modeling like, hey, this is how you interact with people. Disagreement's going to happen. And if I wall up or bury it or lash out or whatever your weapon of choice is, rather than being humble, which that was a victory I just shared. There are a lot of mistakes on the journey of being who I am. But if I'm not willing to own that stuff, I am modeling something either way. And I want to model for my kids what it looks like to love your spouse and to pursue unity, not victory, and to walk together in alignment versus being two people competing for your kid's affection or competing for your own attention or whatever it is.
Yeah, teaching your child to be emotionally intelligent, right?
Yeah.
And I think that works for every child. There are parents who I work with and, their children are autistic and they're like, well, they don't understand. They're not going to understand. It's like, yes, they do. The fact that they're not able to communicate in this moment, how they're feeling, trust me, they are getting it. They are absorbing it. And if you want a way to prove that your child is noticing things in their environment, put something that they really like on the table and look away and see if they don't go for it, right? That just shows they are noticing, they're observing. They may not always speak to it, like Lila,
yeah.
Lila, yeah, like she did. However, they're noticing, they're getting it. So I just want every parent to be mindful of that because that is powerful. And thank you for being man enough to say something, and to understand that she was right, even though, because we as parents, we always want to feel like we're right. And then I used to tell my children, it's like, listen, I learned from you. And they'd look at me like, you learned from us. You're our mom. It's like, yes, I learned from you. I've learned so much from them because I've allowed myself to be open to learn from them. because again, and I work with parents who have autistic children, and they tell me how much they learn from their children. So it's
Yeah.
just being open. Like, this is not, it's not a one-way relationship, right? The current just, the current goes one way, but we can go the opposite of that and, really teach them and model how, and it just also brought to mind what Maya Angelou said. People will not always remember what you said, but they'll remember the way you made them feel. And I
Mm.
felt that when you were talking about your story, when you were sharing this story, with your daughter being the wiser one in the moment.
Yeah. 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 That's real. And it's a nice, honestly, it's one of the huge blessings of having kids is I am constantly being humbled as a dad. Like there are spaces where I could pretend like I've got it together and like communicate whatever, but in my house, they know me. Like there's no hiding in your home. And if you are hiding, I would say there's probably something a lot deeper there. There's no hiding in your home, and so they know me. And so if you were to ask my daughter right now, or my son, who he's 2, so he's probably not going to fully understand this question. So mostly my daughter. But if you say, "Hey, does Dad make mistakes, bad choices? Does he fall short?" She will smile and say yes. And she could give you an example of this week when I had to ask for forgiveness. Now that doesn't mean that it's just a one, like you're saying, it's not just one-sided. Like I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm being stretched. But parenting and leading and shepherding well is going to lead me to have those same conversations with her. And so we're sitting down and we're talking about her fears, and we're talking about when she was rude. And like, hey, like what's a way, let's like rewind that a little bit. How can we shift that to make it actually represent where we're headed as a family? And she knows that language, and we've been doing this since she was born, like before she understood what was going on. And because we've got a game plan and a destination that we're moving towards, and everything's filtered through that, she is moving in that direction and helping us to do the same. Like our strides look different now that we've got 2 tiny humans behind us,
Mhm.
and yet all the while we're moving upstream against the current towards where we believe that God's calling our family to be.
Amen. It actually also reminded me of a little story with my older son, Dre, the artist of these paintings. Um, he was 3 years old, and he asked me, he's like, "Mom, why are strawberries red?" And I
Mm.
said, "God made them that way." I mean, I didn't have an answer. And that was my best answer. "And why are horses' tails long?" "God made them that way." And my 3-year-old responded, "Mom, you don't know anything, do you?"
That's tough.
Yeah.
That's tough.
So the interesting thing is, though, because I mean, they were raised in times of encyclopedias before computers. My son would read encyclopedias to figure out the whys
Mm-hmm.
and all of that. He became such a researcher. I mean, of everything, of shoes. He'd go to a running shoe store and tell them, "Oh yeah, this is made with this and that and blah blah blah." And the guys who were working in the stores were like, "I didn't know that." He knew something about everything, spirituality. He was like, "Mom, you need to, this person and read this book and do this thing." And I was just like, "Oh my goodness, I am just so thankful that, I was open to learning from both my children, and I learned so much from them."
Mm.
And it's been just an absolute joy. I mean, they're absolute gifts from God, and I'm just so honored, that He used me. So, but yeah,
That's
those
awesome.
are times.
Well,
Yeah.
what I love about that too is like it's such a good example of you knowing your kids and like giving them space to thrive. Like, how did he get his hands on an encyclopedia? It's probably because you helped give him the resources that he needed, to get the answers he was looking for and to step forward in his passions. It's one of the things that is really important as because there's a destination where we're moving towards, but there's also like different ways to get there, right? Like every time, like you want to go to Florida, do you want to see the mountains? Do you want to go by the coast? Like do you want to like how do you want to navigate that? And our kids are built a certain way, like whether they are passionate about I don't know, ice cream or passionate about encyclopedias and research or whatever it is. And for us as parents, I would say that the simple steps for identifying the path you get to your destination is identify where they are. So, like, what do they love? What are they passionate about? What are their strengths? Um, Meet them there. So rather than calling up from the mountain, hey, climb better, do better, get to where I am, it's no, I'm going to come down to where you are and I'm going to meet you on the journey and then help them take the next step. Like that's the simplified version of it. The way that I would make it practical is so my son and my daughter are as polar opposite as people could be. Like I'm talking like my daughter is gentle and highly empathetic, and my son is a one man wrecking ball. Like he is just ready to take on the world and fearless. And the way I walk beside him is going to be different than Lila, who like fear has a hold of her a little bit, and we got to take shorter steps and strides when it comes to taking risks. But that's a huge victory. Whereas him, I'm like, hey, buddy, you need to like, let's make sure this branch can hold your weight before you start climbing this tree. Like we need to calm down and dial it back a little bit. And so what you just gave was a really cool model of like, hey, I knew what he needed and I knew him. And because of that, I could walk through those questions as best you could, right? Like technology has changed a little bit, but for better and for worse.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just a really cool picture of like, hey, identify where they are, meet them there, and help them take the next step.
Awesome. I think this is a great place to close. Thank you so much, Josh. This has been such an awesome conversation. I've really enjoyed chatting with you. And to our audience, thank you so much for watching. And I just, there were so many nuggets. And I want you to watch this a couple of times until you get it, because it's really important. I think it's really important for you as a person to understand that going against the current, yes, it is tough. It is tiring. However, the more you do now, you're actually setting your children up for success, and it'll be a lot easier later. Thank you. All right. And see you next week. Okay. Same time. Well, we have another guest sharing another, more